what we're seeing right now is fascism. We're seeing fascism at play. What we're doing is we're seeing somebody who is the head of a party that is just magnanimous, and people are gravitating towards him. He's using military in the streets like fascists do. He's actually suppressing voices, arresting Don Lemon, making sure that his FCC chair pushes Jimmy Kimmel off. And now he's talking about suppressing opposition voices by actually surrounding polling sites with ICE. That literally is the definition of fascism.
In today's video, Bakari Sellers shuts down Brianna Lyman on Newsnight with Abby Phillip as a heated debate erupts over election fraud claims, voter trust, and the political fallout from the 2020 election. With sharp pushback and data-backed arguments, Bakari Sellers cuts through the narrative and exposes how repeated fraud claims fall apart under scrutiny when matched against audits, recounts, and official investigations. So let's dive in and watch how Bakari Sellers shuts down Brianna Lyman on Newsnight with Abby Phillip.
Tonight, as Donald Trump seeks to federalize elections, his former White House chief strategist says he should take it a step further.
You're damn right. We're going to have ICE surround the polls come November. We're not going to sit here and allow you to steal the country again. And you can whine and cry and throw your toys out of the pram all you want, but we will never again allow an election to be stolen.
I'm old enough to remember when many Democrats were warning of this exact thing, Brianna. Now you have, Steve Bannon saying it. You have Trump saying he wants to federalize elections. He wants federal agents to count votes. What are we to make of all of this?
Well, I think given that under Joe Biden we had millions of illegal aliens come in, it's definitely fair to be worried that there could be non-citizens voting. We know that non-citizen voting does happen, even if it is rare, according to some on the left.
How frequent is it?
Well, if you want a list of it, I actually have some for you. Hold on one second.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, like actual numbers.
Yeah,
You
no,
get to page 6 or 7
Or
to
people.
find them.
I know.
I actually wanted to have a lot of quotes for you guys. All right, here we go. So a Georgia audit found 20 non-citizens registered to vote. 9 of them ended up voting in a previous election.
20?
Yeah, let me finish. In Michigan.
After how many years?
It's funny when you guys mock small amounts, but let's remember that Marionette Miller Meeks won her 2020 election by 6 votes. Okay. Imagine if there were 6 fraudulent votes.
Were they 6 undocumented immigrants?
No,
they weren't.
My point is that some elections are decided quite literally on the margins, and every vote counts.
But not a single presidential election has been decided by a margin of non-citizen voters.
Can I finish my point? That doesn't, just because it doesn't impact a presidential election, does not mean that it is not worthy of attention.
What is the percentage of fraudulent non-citizen voting in America?
I don't have the percentage, but I have more examples if you guys wouldn't cut me off. Let me just finish. Exactly.
I don't know.
Hold on a second. 41 non-citizens cast a ballot in North Carolina in 2016. 1,500 foreigners registered to vote in California by the state DMV. They were not citizens in 2018.
Oh, did they? Were they caught?
Did they vote?
Actually,
did they vote?
They're just registered to vote. That doesn't mean they vote.
As a non-citizen is legal.
So,
According to 18 U.S. Code, Section 1015, subsection F says that anyone who knowingly makes a false statement when registering to vote can get jail time.
Here's the thing. I wanted you to go through it because I think it illustrates in and of itself how actually incredibly rare this is. And even when, the Heritage Foundation went looking for non-citizens voting over the course of 10 plus years, they found 77 cases, actually more than 10 years, about 24 years. They found 77 instances of non-voters voting, and they went looking, okay? So listen, if this were about people, non-citizens voting, maybe that's the case, then please help me explain why Trump is still obsessed with Georgia, where he was looking for 11,000 votes, where Georgia, they've got voter ID, they've got tough voting laws. Why is he saying that Georgia was a fraudulent state, that he actually won when he did not?
Exchanges like this always get loud, but when you zoom out, the data matters. Multiple academic reviews and state investigations have repeatedly found that non-citizen voting is extraordinarily rare, often measured in fractions of a percent. One nationwide review found only about 30 suspected cases out of 23.5 million votes, and long-term studies consistently show voter fraud, including non-citizen voting, is extremely rare. Even when incidents are found, they usually come from administrative errors, not coordinated schemes. That context matters because it challenges the idea that elections are being widely manipulated in ways that justify extreme responses or fear-driven policy shifts. Another piece people forget is how US elections are structured legally. The Constitution intentionally gives states primary control over how elections are run, with Congress able to set broad rules, but not the president acting alone. Legal scholars and constitutional texts both reinforce that states prescribe how elections operate, which is why sweeping federal takeovers are controversial across party lines. Recent political pushes to nationalize elections have sparked constitutional concerns, especially because courts and officials have repeatedly rejected claims of widespread 2020 fraud. That's not partisan spin. It's been consistent across audits, courts, and state officials from both parties. There's also a real-world trade-off people don't talk about enough. Studies show millions of eligible voters already struggle to access required documents, meaning aggressive anti-fraud measures can risk blocking legal voters while solving a problem that data shows is extremely small. Reviews across multiple states keep reaching the same conclusion. Non-citizen voting exists, but at levels too small to meaningfully threaten election outcomes. So when conversations jump straight to extreme enforcement ideas, it raises bigger questions about whether the goal is security or reshaping who gets to participate in democracy at all.
Yeah, that's what he believes. I mean, he says the things that he believes, and obviously now there's a federal investigation going on.
Is he right or is he wrong?
I don't know. There's an investigation that a federal judge signed off on, so we'll find out.
Scott, you don't know?
Scott,
you used to know.
Yeah, you used to know.
What are you asking him? Is he right or is he wrong about?
About fraud in Georgia, that
In
whether he
2020.
won or he lost Georgia.
All the evidence we have right now is that Georgia was not fraudulent. However, my point was that a
we have
federal judge,
evidence.
a federal judge just signed off on a warrant to go get evidence, and now there's an investigation going on. That was my point.
Well, to Scott's point really quickly, we do have evidence in Georgia, and I know people don't want me to cite my own reporting, so I will cite the Atlanta Journal-Constitution because it is left-wing. We know that during the 2020 recount, 3,000 ballots were scanned twice. The Secretary of State's office could not confirm if those were counted, though election integrity activists say they were counted. We know during the audit of the 2020 presidential election, there were, quote, several cases in which election workers mistyped vote totals or allocated votes to the wrong candidate. The state election board gave a slap on the wrist.
How many times-
governors
Hold
have
on.
said it was fair.
Brianna, we'll move on from this for a second, but I just want to just ask you a question. How many times did they recount the ballots in Georgia?
I think it was 3.
I think it was 6.
So
they have not only counted the ballots, but they recounted them many, many times. The Trump campaign had opportunities to challenge. Hold on. The Trump campaign had opportunities to challenge this in the courts. They lost. The governor, a Republican, said there was no fraud in the election. The lieutenant governor said a Republican said there was no fraud in the election. The Secretary of State, a Republican, said there was no fraud in the election. So I don't want people to come away from this exchange with even the slightest inkling, despite what you are reading there, that there was any fraud, because that has been completely and totally.
Can I tell you what it is, though? Can I tell you what it is?
Let
me tell you what it is.
When you listen to this, what stands out is how often the conversation jumps from isolated irregularities straight to sweeping conclusions. But when investigators and auditors actually dug into Georgia's 2020 results, they counted the ballots multiple times, including a full hand recount, and the outcome didn't change. Roughly 5 million ballots were effectively reviewed 3 times, and each count still showed the same winner. Even mistakes that were found, like uncounted ballots in some counties, were traced back to human error and didn't flip the result. That matters because it shows the system didn't ignore problems. It caught and corrected them. Another thing that rarely gets mentioned in these heated exchanges is how many independent guardrails already tested these claims. Courts across the country, including judges appointed by both parties, reviewed fraud allegations in detail. Researchers tracking the cases found that the vast majority failed because there simply wasn't evidence to support them. In Georgia specifically, state officials, including Republicans who oversaw the election, repeatedly said there was no widespread fraud. When dozens of courtrooms, audits, and cybersecurity reviews all land in the same place, that's not coincidence. That's institutional verification working the way it's supposed to. There's also the scale problem people overlook. Even groups focused on documenting fraud cases across the country have found numbers that are tiny compared to hundreds of millions of votes cast over time. Some analyses found 0 proven fraud cases tied to Georgia's 2020 presidential vote specifically. That doesn't mean errors never happen. It means they're rare and typically caught. So when rhetoric escalates to talk about elections being stolen without matching evidence, it risks eroding trust in systems that, based on repeated testing and review, have actually shown they can detect and correct issues rather than hide them.
Let me tell you what it is.
You're not going to let me respond.
Well, let me also respond.
Not too sorry.
The AJC is not a left-wing rag. In fact, Greg Bluestein, who's their national political reporter, is just an awesome, awesome journalist, and that just has to be said because local journalism is like really what we have going for us in this country. That's just a side note, a point of personal privilege. What we're seeing right now is fascism. We're seeing fascism at play. What we're doing is we're seeing somebody who is the head of a party that is just magnanimous, and people are gravitating towards him. He's using military in the streets like fascists do. He's actually suppressing voices, arresting Don Lemon, making sure that his FCC chair pushes Jimmy Kimmel off. And now he's talking about suppressing opposition voices by actually surrounding polling sites with ICE. That literally is the definition of fascism. But with that being said, Democrats have to see what is happening. The mayors of the city of Detroit, Mary Sheffield, the mayors of Milwaukee, the mayors of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Clark County, where you have these swing states, need to make sure that they're doing everything they can to protect their institutions, protect their voting centers, and make sure that they are securing that from outside interference.
Well, listen, there's two things. One is Donald Trump, because he is a man with little man with a frail ego, cannot stand the fact that he lost. So he is trying to rewrite history, whether it's Minnesota, whether it's Georgia. He's probably in a padded room somewhere with the ballots they took from Georgia, circling them for him right now, because he is hell-bent and thinks he can rewrite history, whether it's January 6th, whether it's the election. He can't stand the idea that his obituary is going to say that he lost in 2020, in the same way he can't stand having lost the Nobel Peace Prize. And the second thing is they are afraid of losing in the midterms. That's why they are trying to change the voting maps, the districting. That's why they are trying to scare people. My prediction is that these threats are going to piss people off, piss voters off, and more people are going to show up to vote because they will not let themselves be intimidated and frightened by this thug.
I don't think it's an accident that Republicans lost a race in Texas by 30 points. It swung 30 points away from them. They lost it by 15. It had been 15 points gain. They lost Latinos, et cetera. And a few days later, Donald Trump is talking about nationalizing our elections. Now, I don't know why anyone's listening to Steve Bannon, given his latest forays in the Epstein files, but we should listen to Donald Trump. And Donald Trump should be a concern to everyone. Because remember what happened last time. Everyone said, don't worry what he says. And then we had the insurrection on January 6th.
What stands out is how disconnected the fraud narrative is from actual data. Multiple independent reviews have consistently shown voter fraud in the US is extraordinarily rare, often measured in fractions of a percent across millions of ballots. Major post-election audits, including Georgia's full hand recount, confirmed the original results and found no evidence of widespread fraud or tampering. When you stack repeated audits, court cases, and bipartisan certification processes together, it paints a picture of a system that is imperfect but is still fundamentally resilient. That matters because public trust should be built on verified outcomes. Another thing people overlook is how democracies usually erode gradually, not overnight. Political scientists who study democratic backsliding often point to early warning signs like normalizing attacks on media, portraying opposition as enemies, and using government power in ways that blur lines between law enforcement and political loyalty. History shows countries rarely call themselves authoritarian while it's happening. Instead, leaders frame it as security, order, or patriotism. That's why local institutions, courts, journalists, and election workers become so important. They act as guardrails when national rhetoric gets heated. Ignoring those guardrails because of party loyalty is usually how political systems. Finally, when people talk about changing district maps or election rules right before major elections, it raises real fairness questions. Research in political science has shown aggressive partisan gerrymandering can let parties win a disproportionate number of seats compared to their share of the vote, which can weaken accountability and voter confidence. That's why many democracies rely on independent redistricting commissions instead of lawmakers drawing their own maps. Healthy elections aren't just about stopping fraud, they're about making sure every voter feels their vote carries roughly equal weight. If voters believe outcomes are predetermined by map design or procedural barriers. Pause. Are you getting tired of getting half the story from biased news sources? One outlet says one thing and another says the complete opposite. How are you supposed to know what's actually true? That's where ground news comes in. It lets you compare how different media outlets, left, right, and center are covering the same story. So you can see the full picture instead of just the echo chamber. And here's the best part. Click the link in the description and get 40% off the Vantage tier, which gives you even deeper insights into media bias and political trends. Stay informed, think for yourself, and check out Ground News in the description down below.